An Australian film has just been released on various digital platforms and streaming. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the writer, producer, and director of this film, White Blood, Richard Williams. Welcome to Movie Metropolis.
G'day, happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, I'm gathering this is perhaps your first film. Tell me about how it all came about.
One of the follies, I think, with going after your first film is a lot of people sort of shoot for the stars, think that they find a script or they write a script that basically is a $20 million script or something like that. So I'm a writer naturally. I thought, well, I want to knock out my first film. I've been working in the commercial space for long enough. I thought, well, I can write a film that's smart enough, self-contained, but still engaging, and still be able to, do it myself. Something that can be achieved. So that's kind of where I started. I thought, well, I'll do something that's actually achievable, unlike most of the initial ideas of young filmmakers. Working in the industry in Sydney, I've gained a lot of contacts, had a lot of great people who I could call on to work for not much, and be very committed to the script, to the idea. And I was just super lucky to have a lot of good people I could lean on.
Okay, that's a really interesting background to your film. So tell me about fashioning the story and the screenplay about this couple who go off and she's not well, and they sort of have a suicide pact or whatever. Tell me about the origins of the actual story itself.
So initially, I'd written it to have some sort of outside influence, say, to be they have a third person come into the house, and that is say the killer or something. And I thought, well, it's a bit derivative, and I thought, well, the most horrific thing really is reality and the breakdown of these relationships. And I thought, well, why don't I just, force these two together to the point of breaking? And I felt like, you know, being in relationships before, you can see yourself, being a bit insular and not seeing the outside world, not having perspective on your relationship. And I feel like a lot of the most horrible things that happen within relationships happen when you're cut off from the outside world, when you get too insular, and when you can't have perspective on things. And so that's kind of I went worst case scenario, and I really added to the character Mark all the worst attributes of guys that can be in those types of relationships. And I thought, well, let's just keep pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. It's so sure of himself that he'll go to any lengths because he knows best, and he definitely doesn't.
Well, it's so interesting the way the story develops, and there are sort of time shifts and so on in the film as well, and especially the heightened drama that occurs during the film. Uh, did that create some issues for you in terms of writing the screenplay, getting it right before you started shooting?
100%. It was a very tricky screenplay to write, just purely because when you don't have any outside influence, and you have to basically make it engaging for the audience. You can only do so much with the two characters at play. So having it in a sense where you're creating drama by unraveling their past and unraveling what they're actually there for, because it's not, when they first come to the house, it's not initially explicit why they're there. And I felt leaving a bit of a mystery really helped drive the narrative, and leaving the mystery to their past, leaving the mystery as to why they're there, and to what's happening with Betty, and to Mark's, his thoughts, his motives. And I felt like that really helped. But initially it was quite tough to have this story without that real driving force. So yeah.
And very interesting. And I can also imagine, as it's your first film, it's a very limited sort of one location, two people. I assume it was shot during lockdown, all that sort of thing. Um,
Yep.
then it must have been difficult, perhaps with financing and support.
Well, one of the things I tossed up, house deposit or first film, and that's basically how it went. Um, getting the extra financing. It was kind of one of those things that I'd sort of given up on. It's a chicken and the egg sort of thing. You need to have your first film. You need to have a proof of concept before you can really get financing from distributors. Didn't really have that, so I had to go do it myself, and then yeah, and I was working all the way through paying off debts, whatever. It is what it is. But I'm really glad I did it. I'm really glad I put something so beautiful onto screen. Um, Working through COVID was one of those things which, it was very tough. But actually, I feel like a lot of people on set were saved by the fact that we were actually doing something like this during COVID, purely because, everything sort of shut down. It was a very grim time, and being able to escape out to the Kangaroo Valley, which is amazing, and stay there for a couple of weeks was really a good way to get back to reality.
And how did you find the cabin?
Oh, so it was one of the big things. I'd done a lot of searching, and one of the big barriers with actually getting a location for this film was the subject matter of the film. When you say, well, the crux of the film is a suicide pact, you you approach these locations, a lot of locations, especially, ones that double as Airbnbs, they don't want to be associated with anything like that. Found this cabin in the Kangaroo Valley, absolute lovely host, and there was no qualms about it. And basically, it had a river running through it. It had, paddocks and paddocks that you could do whatever you wanted in it. It was basically free reign, and I was very glad. It was better than what I imagined it to be. It was actually all the pieces fell into place. It was great.
Oh, well done on that. That's great. And as you say, it was for about 2 weeks
Yeah.
of shooting. Yeah. So tell me about Ariel Cartwright and Liam Walker. How did you find them?
So it was one of those interesting processes during COVID. I'd never done casting 100% via Zoom, and which created some tricky things. So Ari had been referred to me by a friend, and she ended up being cream of the crop when it came to auditioning. With Liam, there were a few people tussling for that role, and I had to sort of interview them together, acting out a scene through Zoom. Meanwhile, Liam's connection was horrible, so it was a delay, and I'm watching it, and his face is, yeah, and I'm like, and I was just like, oh God, there's something I just felt about Liam. He just had that X factor. So it really didn't matter that the technical issues with the audition and how bad it really went. He just had something, and I just had to go with my gut, and it really showed. Like well, Ari and him, but he really took to that part, and you could definitely see that they both of them had some shared experiences to lean on, and they really opened up and really created some very raw performances, which I couldn't be more happy about.
Uh-huh. Well done. They are very good. I agree with you. So tell me about directing your script and these actors, and getting it right in terms of the whole mise en scene, the whole approach to your direction.
Well, I think what was what was a big part of my initial direction was just getting the framing perfect. So that was one of the things where I worked very hard with the DP, Mark Brightwell, on just having the most picturesque framing, as and because we were limited in time and also money, it was a lot of, I shot it basically like it was a stage play. So a lot of long takes and a lot of still takes. So not too much moving camera. Within that, you've got these two great actors. So I basically gave them the freedom to do what they wanted within this frame. And My direction was literally purely technical because we'd worked enough together prior to get these characters right. So all I had to do most of the time was just to make sure they were working within frame, working within focus, keeping continuity right between them, because they basically, like with the rest of the crew, when you hire professionals like them, you really don't have to do much as a director.
Fair enough too. And I'm interested too in both the editing and the music, and especially the montage opening of the film, and just the whole approach aesthetically and musically to the film.
So with the initial montage and with the shooting, with the it was actually shot on Super 8 by the two actors. So I'd given them this camera throughout the film, and it was one of the ways I thought, well, we only have so much time, and how do I sort of bring something sort of raw and genuine to it without, say, hiring another camera person, hiring all this stuff? And I was like, oh, well, I've got this Super 8 camera. I'll give it to them, and we'll see how it goes. And they shot some very beautiful stuff, obviously. In terms of the music, well, I was very lucky. So while I was writing it, I had an artist who I'd listened to while I was constructing this film, and then I had the opportunity to use his work throughout the picture. So there's one of his pieces, "Tragedy at the Commons," which I used as a bit of a motif throughout. So it's the initial opening montage song, and then whenever Mark opens up about his past and about his afterlife, the song comes on, and it sort of works its way through over and over again throughout the piece, and it sort of acknowledges his downward spiral. So it was tactically using music to show their mental state, which I was very lucky to have access to those songs, which just made the piece, especially when you consider how dreamlike the movie looks as well. It's
Mm.
dreamlike music. Yeah.
It does, and yes, the music fits in very well. I thought that was nicely packaged in terms of the look and sound of the film. So, I mean, another issue obviously is getting the film out there. You want audiences to see it, and it's great to see Bounty Films as sort of supporting you there.
Yeah. So Bounty have been great. They've gotten it out there. Right now we're just in the process of getting eyes on it. It's one of those things with indie films. It's always it's a saturated market. So it's one of those things, being able to show that this is different. This isn't a standard indie film. This looks amazing. We had professionals on it. We're not just going out there first time holding a camera with people who aren't actors. These people are career actors. There's career professionals behind it, and it looks and sounds amazing. And I've had people who've watched it, um, who've come to me after, who've lost people, who've said like the script has, resonates so much with their experiences and how they've felt, and especially of how they thought about the afterlife. And I feel like going back to it, it all starts with a beautiful script, and I think that's what this film has.
Oh, look, well done on that. It's nice to get that sort of feedback. That's terrific. So I'm intrigued. Were there any films or filmmakers that may have inspired your approach to White Blood?
Well, one of the things Richard Linklater, I watched his films and I thought, well, he can make a film about two characters just talking. And I mean, this film's a lot more than just two characters just talking, but it sort of inspired me to go, well, I can get very engaged just through conversation. And you don't need all these special effects. You don't need to have, bloody helicopters coming through and filming people running through fields and all that. You literally, you can have some of the most engaging scenes with, two people talking in a table. So he was one of the big inspirations for me. And yeah, it gave me, oh, actually another inspiration. Uh, oh, I've forgotten his name, but he directed Thunder Road, and it was just a film that won at South by Southwest.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but it was one of those films. It's a small drama,
Yep.
um, but gosh, it had such a resonating impact on me, and I just thought, well, he did it for paid nothing really to make it, and you can do something so amazing and something that can resonate with people on basically nothing. So yeah, it was basically that.
Okay. No, that's really good. And I suppose now you're looking to make more films.
Yes. So my next film, well, I've got a few in the pipeline, but my next film just made the finalists at Slam Dance for screenwriting. So hopefully I can leverage that. So I'm currently pitching that. That one's a bit of a sci-fi drama with a very nice high concept called The Generation. And yeah, it's one of those things, whether I go the route of trying to find financing for the larger film, or I do the same thing and do another self-contained film. It's right now, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm seeing if this script gets any more acclaim. So it's currently in the running for a few competitions. So we'll see there. And I've been pitching it to large distributors, so which there has been interest. So that's my next step.
Oh, I wish you well on that. That sounds great. I mean, you've got now a good calling card with this film, so that gives you that
Exactly.
impetus. Yeah. So, what was the spark that got you interested in being a filmmaker in the first place?
I it was actually the first thing I ever wanted to do. So my mum will tell you that I wanted to be a director from the age of 5. Well, I didn't really know what directing was back then, but I thought as a child that being a director, you'd be able to, you'd know the secret of how to get into movies, how to live in the world of a movie. And although I was a bit, naive at the time, I don't think I was too far off. I think being a director, you do and involve yourself. You do become absorbed by the worlds of these films, and but rather than it coming externally, it comes from inside. So yeah, that's where I sort of started, and then I've just been figuring it out on the way.
Well done on that. And I must ask you, why did you decide to settle on the title White Blood?
So yeah, that was a big one. So initially during writing, it was called The Pact, and I felt that it was a fairly basic name, and well, you Google The Pact, and there's a lot comes up anyway. But white blood was, it has to do with white blood cells, obviously, and the relationship they have with, battling cancers, battling diseases within you. They can be the cause and they can be the solution to things. And I felt like that was a great representation of their relationship,
Mm.
how someone can be so supportive, but also can destroy you at the same time.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Okay, so it's excellent to see that White Blood is available on various streaming platforms, and courtesy of Bountyfilms. And last question I'll ask you, Richard, have you seen any other films recently that impressed you, or streaming, or anything?
What did I watch recently? Does it have to be a new one? Because
No,
I watched
anything.
I watched Kurosawa's Ran the other day, and that was spectacular. I just it was one of those things to do King Lear like that, and it's just that the imagination to do it and the cinematography. And actually, right before watching it, I watched Napoleon, which I really, really didn't like. And then you watch Ran, which is no special effects, no CGI, no, and everything just hits a million times more. The set pieces are amazing, and no, that was beautiful. That was probably the best film I've seen recently.
What an interesting contrast, Kurosawa's superb film and Ridley Scott's So-So Napoleon. So yes.
Exactly. I'm reading War and Peace, and then I watched I watched Napoleon. I'm like, what is this? This is it's a it's a montage. His Russian campaign. It's a montage for his Egypt campaign. This isn't storytelling.
I love the way you analyze that. You're obviously not going to make a film like that.
No, no.
Okay, no, excellent stuff. All right.
Give me $200 million, and we'll see what I can do.
I'm sure you'll have a much better
Oh,
script. But anyway,
exactly.
we've been speaking to Richard Williams, who is the writer, producer, and director of White Blood, now available on various streaming services. Richard, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure. All the best. Bye bye.
Bye bye.